Now, the reason that this has become a problem for many other companies out there is because a lot of those other national platforms that I talked about, those larger sites that are pulling data and information from those MLSs, their entire business model is built around having access to all of the available listings that are out there. And if someone or there becomes a trend that's now available that starts to take away some of that inventory or not let them aware that some inventory is actually available for sale, that's going to hurt their business model. Because a lot of times, not only are they using those listings to bring traffic and visitors to their website, but they're also using it to sell leads to other agents that are out there, right? So they say, hey, Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offered expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, I want to take a kind of a turn and talk about something that most people are really only talking about in terms of a seller, but this also plays a very big role in the home buyers process and what it looks like to be able to search for homes that are available, right? And so this is a topic that is not really well known to the general public, but is making a lot of noise in the real estate world. And so I wanted to take some time to explain what all is happening behind the scenes right now and how this can have a very real impact on you, not just now, but also moving forward in what it looks like to set up a home search for a buyer. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff going on. So let's take a little moment to break that down and why that should be important to you. So in the real estate world, we have all different ways that we can market and make a home available for sale and really spread the word about that home. And much of what is going on right now, the debate that's happening, revolves around how that information is spread, right? The information is key. He or she who holds all the data, all the stats, all the information, that's really going to be who's in control or in the driver's seat in this market right now, right? And usually when I'm working with a buyer, there tend to be two primary concerns that they have that stand above all else, right? There's a lot of things that they're worried about because it's obviously a big transaction, a big deal going on, and it's a lot that you're really not aware of and you're discovering in real time. But there are two things that always come up to the top. And the first one, obviously, is they don't want to buy a lemon, right? They don't want to buy a house that becomes an ultimate money pit where they're constantly having to pump money into it, and there's all these issues and problems that they didn't foresee when they first purchased a home, right? That's their primary concern. The second concern that often comes up or raises to the top is whether or not they will miss out on a home that would have been a perfect fit for them, right? And so that's something that I'm always having to work and talk through when I'm having that initial buyer consultation and we're figuring out what the process looks like. One of the biggest things that we spend a lot of time talking about is what it looks like for their search. How am I going to help them discover homes that may or may not be a good fit? What portals, what access, what tools am I going to give them? Do I have home search apps? Are there different platforms that I would recommend that they look to? Because they want to make sure that, again, they don't miss out on something that could be the perfect fit or the perfect home for what they're looking for in that moment. And so we usually talk a lot about like, hey, here's the tools that I use. Here's ways that I can set it up. Here's ways that I'll notify you about homes that are available. I always tell people that when we first start out, I try to make their search criteria as broad as possible just to make sure that they don't miss out on anything. And so usually if someone gets very detailed or specific and telling me what they want in a house, I will usually purposely and intentionally start a little bit broader than that, right? So if you get down to like the minor details, like, hey, we don't want a house that has a closed off kitchen, or we don't want a house that doesn't have a screen porch or anything like that. Like if they start to get real specific, I'll still open it up to everything just to make sure, because I cannot begin to tell you how many times somebody has purchased a house that was almost the complete opposite of what they initially told me they wanted, right? And so we don't want to well, we want to leave flexibility, I should say, for houses that you may not have considered originally, right? But that's a very, very key piece in the home search process is how do we find homes that may be of interest to you? What platforms, what sites, what tools are we looking to find that? And that's where all of this kind of bickering and fighting and arguments and lawsuits really comes into play and what's happening, right? So a lot of what's going on behind the scenes right now is in relation to kind of private or what we call sometimes pocket listings in a case and how those things are distributed to the general public. So usually the way that it works is when I'm working with a seller and we go to put their house on the market, the general goal and the general way to make it the most effective possible way to kind of get that in there is that you want to get as many eyeballs on that home as you possibly can. The more eyeballs you have on a home, the more showings you have. The more showings you have, the higher the likelihood that you're going to sell for the highest price possible and get the best terms that you possibly can, right? And so usually most situations, we're trying to get that home in front of as many people as possible. Back in the day, you had to go through some more expensive kind of old-fashioned techniques to make this happen. Right? You had to pay to put it into a real estate book, which had all of the active listings. You had to pay to put it in magazines, and you might send out mailers to let individuals in a certain area or community know that home was for sale. But again, the main point of it was to make that home accessible to as many people as possible so that you could find a buyer who was willing to give you the best terms possible. Internet came along, obviously changed that whole setup completely, where it now makes so much of the information available to the consumer directly. And there's all these different sites and everything that have come available to make that happen. And so when we go to put a listing in the MLS, right, that's the database that agents use to share houses that they have listed for sale, that database then shares or distributes that listing to all of the other sites that are out there that are feeding from this MLS, right? So a lot of the third-party sites that you may know and love and have used for years, you know, the Zillows, the Realtor.com, Homes.com, all these different sites, they are pulling that data and that information from all of the MLSs across the country, right? So every area, there's thousands of MLSs across the country. We're all entering in our information and our listings in there and then having it spread and disseminated to all of those other third-party sites that are out there. Some that are very small, kind of general sites, and then some that are very big, behemoth, large companies and corporations. But the point and the reason behind that, and the reason why we're in favor, obviously, of doing that is because, again, we're trying to get that home in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Right. And so where the problem has now come in is that there are some situations, not all, this doesn't happen a ton, but there are some situations where a seller may decide it's in their best interest to withhold that listing from being disseminated to the thousands of sites that are out there, right? There are some situations where they may say, hey, I want to sell this home, but I would rather keep it a little more low key. I don't want it to necessarily be spread across the way. There have been situations in the past where you might have a celebrity or maybe your local head football coach, right, who's considering moving, and they may not want it to be public knowledge that they're trying to sell this house. They're like, hey, I want you to put some feelers out there, but I don't necessarily want this to be public news because that could change a lot of things that are happening, right? People are always stalking what's going on with coaches in the area. My wife is a Nebraska fan. Those people, they will stalk those college teams and know what's going on, who's flying in, what coaches are in what areas, right? Like a lot of people are watching this stuff, right? And so if you have someone who's in that situation, they may not want their house or the knowledge that their house is for sale to be disseminated to everyone out there. And so in those cases, they might do or agree to do what's called a pocket listing in some cases, where that's where an agent will say, hey, I will market your home to the people who are in my general network, right? So the agents who are within my firm or in my general area, I will send that listing or market that listing directly to them, but I'm not going to put it just out there in the MLS for all to see and for it to be spread to all the sites that are out there, right? We'll see if we can sell it that way. We're not going to do all the traditional things we would normally do. We're not going to put a sign in the yard, obviously. We're not going to do any of that, but we're just going to try to use word of mouth and use some direct person-to-person marketing to see if we can find a buyer for that home. Obviously, the less exposure you have, the less likely you'll be able to find someone who can absolutely come in and purchase that home, or you may not be able to get the best price possible, but it may help with not making it complete public knowledge that this house is listed for sale, right? It's going to take a little bit longer for that word to spread. And so that's one thing that they might do. Or some situations they may say, hey, I just want to kind of test the market with this price. I'm not really certain right now. I don't really need to, but I just want to kind of put some feelers out there just to see what's out there, right? I remember Zillow years ago had like a make me move feature where it was like, hey, if someone will give me X number, that'll be good enough for me. And I'll say, hey, I'll sell it to you. I don't need to go through the whole process of selling or anything like that. And there's some cases too where there's whole business models out there with institutional investors who will pay you a cash price for your house. And some people may say, hey, I know I'm leaving some money on the table, but the convenience of a cash offer and having that money available right now, it's worth it for me, right? And so like those are just options that people could take. Now, the reason that this has become a problem for many other companies out there is because a lot of those other national platforms that I talked about, those larger sites that are pulling data and information from those MLSs, their entire business model is built around having access to all of the available listings that are out there. And if someone or there becomes a trend that's now available that starts to take away some of that inventory or not let them aware that some inventory is actually available for sale, that's going to hurt their business model. Because a lot of times, not only are they using those listings to bring traffic and visitors to their website, but they're also using it to sell leads to other agents that are out there, right? So they say, hey, if someone is interested in seeing this house or wants to set up a showing for it, they can give that lead to people who are paying them to come to their site, right? And so again, if they now have access to less listings that are available, less leads that they're able to sell, less visitors and less foot traffic coming directly to their site, because they may have to go elsewhere to find those particular listings. They may have to go directly to that agent or to that firm to find out about that home that's listed for sale. And so there's been a ton of back and forth. There's been lawsuits that have been filed. There's a lot of infighting that's happening between these like huge mammoth corporations and industries in whether or not that should be allowed and whether or not it will continue to be the case. Now, most agents will tell you, and I will tell you the same as well, it's usually going to be in your best interest to make that home accessible to as many people as possible. There are some rare instances like what I talked about where they may not want that to be the case, but usually if you want it to be something where it's going to have the best chance to sell, it's usually in your best interest to make it accessible to as many eyeballs as possible and to send it to all these other sites as well. One kind of argument that some of the other home search portals and platforms and sites are making against agents being able to do this is that they're saying that there's some agents out there who are saying, hey, instead of me making this home available to everybody out there, I'm just going to kind of spread the word myself, and I may be able to keep that sale in-house, or I may be able to find the buyer myself, in which case I may be able to get a double side of the commission, right? There's all kinds of accusations and kind of like different motives that may or may not be at play. That's not always the case, but again, that is something that may come up in the arguments that are back and forth as to why this would be something that people would want to do, right? There may be certain firms that say, hey, we want to drive as much of that traffic to our sites in our areas as possible and keep that all in-house, right? That way people, when we're advertising to different potential buyers and sellers out there, where you can say, hey, we have access to inventory that the general market doesn't have access to, right? And that can help drive more people towards us, right? There's all kinds of little motives and things that are at play behind the scenes, and there's a lot of varying passionate opinions on whether or not this should be allowed. I definitely don't think that is going to be a good option for most sellers. And most of the time when sellers do this, I don't think they even have a full understanding of just how much they're hurting their odds of being able to sell that home for the highest price possible. I also am not in agreement with being able to hamper or stop some of the sellers' opinions and sellers' options for what they have available, right? I'm always going to be in favor of the seller having as many options available to them as possible, right? So if they decide like, hey, I want to do the private listing or the pocket listing, or I want to sell the home by myself, or I want to sell the home using an agent, I think that you should have any and all of those options available to you to use. I don't believe that we should ever step in and say someone is not allowed to sell their home in a certain manner or a certain way. If that's what they want to do, by all means, let them do it, right? But I also think that we need to make sure that it's abundantly clear to that seller what they're giving up and what potential consequences lie ahead if they take that route. Now, all of this to say, why is this important to you as a buyer or someone that is looking to purchase a home? Again, to that second primary concern that most buyers have, am I going to miss out on a home that could be a good fit for me? This is something that is very much at play, especially moving forward if we start to see more kind of groundbreaking shifts in this whole debate. And this back and forth. It could reach a point like if this starts to become a trend where more and more large firms are doing this, you may end up seeing a situation where it's like hey, instead of just saying, hey, let's set up a search for you in our local MLS for you to find homes that are available and you being able to access most of the inventory, we may say, hey, we're going to have to set up 2 or 3 searches, right? We're going to have to set up a search in the MLS. We're also going to have to track these other major sites and firms to see what listings they may have exclusively through their company, right? It might add a whole layer of ambiguity to the search process and what options are available out there. Now, I don't believe that that's going to become the norm in many cases, but that can absolutely be the case, especially if you're talking about more unique properties, or if you're talking about homes that are in extremely popular areas where they may not need quite as much exposure as other listings to be able to sell effectively. You may be in a situation where you're going to like, hey, if we're looking in a neighborhood or an area where there are really, really popular homes that people are just clamoring to buy, we may not be able to trust that everything that's in the MLS is everything that's available, right? We may have to look to those other individual sites, and it's going to add some more work and issues to that process, right? So those are things that you're going to need to keep in mind. We already saw up in Chicago, I believe it was, there was already a large firm that had removed a ton of their listings. Like we saw like 40,000 listings that were taken away from being displayed on some of the other popular home search sites out there because they are, again, fighting to have the right to be able to do what they want to do with their listings and how they want to market them. And so, again, there's a lot of back and forth, but again, that is a major pocket of that market now that is filled with a bunch of sellers who are figuring out, okay, how do we make sure that our house is still being seen by everybody possible, right? So, like I said, even if you have a problem or at odds with some of the home search sites that are available out there, you still as an agent understand that you want that house to be seen by as many people as possible. And if those sites are the most popular way for your clients to see it, I want to make sure that they can see it there as well too. And so that's just one way, a domino that we've seen start to fall that can really change and impact the way this is viewed and the way that we go about the search. And so I'll continue to be tracking this and keeping up with it. Again, it's not something that the general public really understands is happening, but it is absolutely making waves in the real estate industry in how this data is shared, how these listings are marketed, and I'm always going to make sure that I'm helping you understand where that goes as well. And so I just want wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that as well. I'm always going to make sure that I'm doing my part to make sure that as many homes and listings as possible are available for my clients to view and see and know what's out there. But you also need to be aware of what's going on behind the scenes and how that's going to impact your search. So I hope that you found that information helpful. I'll continue to track this, let you know what huge developments I see happening and what's going on with all these suits and everything. But it's definitely some fascinating information, and it's a testament to just how important data and how important the stats and everything are, because that is really where everything lies at the heart of being able to know what's out there, what's available. Hope that you all have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.